2, 1.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to PIMA's final 2021 Futures Conference. Welcome everyone who's here today. And for those of you who have attended all of our events this year, thank you for sticking with us through the whole sequence. So we have a very specific topic that we're going to be talking about today, and we're really looking forward to getting your input on these different items. And as usual, for these events, we're going to be using Mentimeter. And there's a couple things to be aware of. So for those of you familiar with Menti, you can go ahead and connect to now. The address and the code is across the top. But we will take a few moments to connect everybody a little bit later. But I do want you all to be aware of the fact that there is a 30-second delay. Now, Anthony and I, as we usually do, we'll be sharing some updates during those pauses. We have some interesting facts and pieces of information for you today. But please bear with us because there will be that slight delay between when we change the things and when you see it through Menti. We'll take our time today. It's really important to us. We hear your feedback. We will be sharing with you a draft strategic plan, and your input is critical as we shape this document and finalize it. So we'll make sure we have time to get your input on these different topics. And as usual, we have prizes. One student attendee will win $250 towards their educational expenses. One community member will win a $100 gift card. And on the very end of this event, we'll have a survey that you can fill out so we can get the contact details of who is here so we can select winners later on today. And thanks to the PIMA Community College Foundation, who is once again sponsoring this event and providing these raffle prizes for us. So as a brief agenda, we'll have some welcoming comments today from Chancellor Lee Lambert. And then Anthony and I will talk you through the draft plan. We'll talk about the overarching goals, a little bit about the structure of the plan, and then we will talk about the priorities. And it's really those priorities on which your input is absolutely key. And with that, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Chancellor Lee Lambert to give some opening comments.
Well, thank you, Nick, and good morning, everybody. And thank you for taking time out of your Friday morning to join us. We recognize that you have many other options in terms of how you use your time, and we just appreciate that you chose to share it with us today. I want to thank Nick Richmond, Anthony Sovak, and the entire planning team for making today happen, but really to pulling all of the events that have happened over the course of this year to really start to address mission fulfillment as well as our strategic plan for our future. So as I've noted in past welcomings, I think it's important for us to keep in mind to pay attention to where that puck is going, what problem are we trying to solve, as well as what story is the data and evidence telling us, especially in the context of teaching and learning. And I thought I'd just share just a few examples of what I mean, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Nick. So the Higher Learning Commission recently had its conference, and they really put together a very nice document around macro trends. So I'll give you some examples. In terms of academic progression, the future trend is going to be nonlinear and more lifelong learning. Continuous enrollment will decline for degree-seeking students. Digital delivery, will become the norm for students and employers. So online, hybrid, augmented, virtual reality will just grow in ever importance. The influence of business partnerships will continue to grow in importance. Community colleges are used to developing these relationships, but they will increase in significance, not decrease. Learning outcomes, credentials, badges, certificates, boot camps, they will also continue to increase. So these are just some of the many macro trends that are happening in the universe of higher education. So we look forward to your feedback and input. So with that, thank you so much. And Nick, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much, Chancellor Lambert, for those comments. And so to get us started today, it's my pleasure to introduce my co-presenter for the event today, as has been the case through the series of Futures conferences. And I'll hand you over to Dr. Anthony Sovak.
Hey folks, it's me, Anthony. So today we're going to use Menti as we have been to get some feedback on the draft strategic plan. And so to do that, what you want to do is open up either another tab in your browser, another web browser, or on your device. And you want to head over to www.menti.com. And when you're prompted, you want to enter the code 28379399. And that code will be up at the top of our slides, I'm pretty sure, throughout the event. So if you miss this slide or you accidentally close the browser, you can come back, and then this will serve how Nick and I and the strategic plan gather your feedback on the events. So I'm extra talking in part because there is a 30-second delay. So what I'm saying now will eventually appear on my other tab. I've got the YouTube open and I'm looking at the comments. If you have comments or questions, we also have members of the STAR staff and the strategic planning team in the chat. So if you do have questions, you can ask there as well. But yeah, so why don't we assume that some of us at least have made it over to menti.com and entered the code 28379399 and start off with just a practice question. Maybe a practice question, but it's a genuine question. Are you excited about the event today? We maybe should have allowed, I was going to say, maybe we should have allowed multiple answers because I feel like I am excited, but I'm also excited for the weekend too. So that's good. And then I'm also very excited myself today. Was when we started to talk about how we would do a futures conference virtually. I believe I had the brilliant idea of doing 4 of them, which I think was the right call, but also having been through 4 of them, I'm ready to not have to do one in 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And I'm optimistic that we might be able to have one in real time in the flesh world next year. I do like seeing folks. I do believe that there's collaboration that happens in those synchronous and spontaneous moments, but I also think that you can't email bacon yet. And until you can email bacon, this will never quite be the same, will it? Good. And who do we have? What are our numbers looking like today? We have about 77 people watching. I see about 40 people have responded. That's great. Excellent. Give it another couple seconds here. And then let's move on to the next one, and we can do another question. This one's just to kind of get a sense of who's watching right now. So if you could enter your primary affiliation, student, community member, faculty, staff, administrator, that sort of thing. I think I can answer these questions too in my other tab. That's me. Great, 23% community members. Hey, we got some students, excellent. Welcome. Excellent. We don't have as many updates as we did last time, so I haven't broken into them yet. Usually I go and start rattling off some wonderful things that are going on with the college. There are a lot of wonderful things going on with the college. But we're also, in the post-spring break, so I know there's a lot of grading going on. I'm glad to see we have some faculty here who've made some time for this. Yeah, excellent. So because we're talking about future and planning for the future, we thought an interesting question to ask at the beginning of this was, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? So it's maybe a fun question to get a nice word. Is this going to be a word cloud, Nick?
Yes, I believe it is.
It's our favorite. So we get to see what did you want to be when you grew up? A robot teacher, me too. Oh, it was robot teacher. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm getting there. I need more upgrades. Astronaut. I didn't even put that. actually wanted to be an astronaut biologist, like a botanist, like growing plants in space, but I'm not real good at growing things or science. So we'll see. That did not pan out for me. Rich, professional ice skater. A ninja, excellent. I mean, there's some good ones here. We need to get a ninja program going on. I think maybe spy could be lumped into that too. That could be the pathway. We did used to offer Taekwondo at the college. I'm not sure that we still do, but back when I was a student here, I took a Taekwondo class at West Campus. Not quite ninja related, but it's ninja related, and then there is kicking and punching. Excellent, great work. Park ranger, that was on my list for a short time. Then I realized I was an extrovert. And I thought maybe that's not a great fit. Also, I don't like moving very much. Like I do it when I have to, but I feel like there's a lot of hiking and stuff. And I like hikes, I like a couple weeks breaks between my hikes. I can't do it all the time. Anyway, great work. Lots of good stuff there. Okay, so for today, we don't just have these kinds of nostalgic questions. We want to look to the future. So we need your input on PCC's next strategic plan. Now, the draft plan is available, and there is a short URL there, bit.ly/FC21plan. There's a short URL you can type into your browser to get to it. If you are adept at navigating the PCC website, you can also find it, I think, through other channels, although the exact file location, I don't know exactly where it is. I think if you just type strategic plan in the search bar, it'll show up too, no?
Maybe. If you're on the website, the way you can get to it is go to the About PIMA link. And there's, I think it's called Leadership and Policies, maybe. I don't have it right in front of me. But if you go to that tab, you'll find a link there that will take you to integrated planning. I would say for everyone following along, you don't have to open the plan document. There's some additional information in there, but we will be walking through all of the key elements during the morning. So if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But if you do want that additional information, this may be useful for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a long document, and so we're not going to pause for everyone to take their time to read it. But you might want to say, I think that's interesting. Let's see more about it. And as always, you can email any member of the strategic planning team to send your feedback, myself or Nick as well, as we are currently the most visible, but there's a lot in the chat who can connect you with us, and sort of we can get your feedback that way also. So I forget when I'm supposed to stop talking, so I'm just going to keep talking. Right? Anyway, so the current overarching goal for the Achieve 60 Pima County, is this where you're talking about Achieve 60, Nick?
Yeah,
I feel like I always defer to you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll take over and talk about this and how we're approaching the goals. So the overarching goal underlying everything that you see in the strategic plan is all focused on Achieve 60 Pima County. Those of you who were at the last Futures Conference event, we shared some data related to this and talked about it in a little bit more detail. But there are essentially two primary sub-goals within Achieve 60. And for this, we at PIMA are aligning ourselves directly with the goals in the statewide effort. So these are directly really from there, but tailored to specifically focus on the community here in Pima County. So the sub-goals are these. By 2030, 60% of Pima County residents aged between 25 and 64 will hold a post-secondary credential or degree. And the second part of this is that this means 60% for each of the diverse race ethnicity populations that we serve within our community. And so this focuses on overall educational attainment, but it also has directly woven into it an equity component and ensuring we are meeting the needs across the diverse residents that we serve here within our community. And what is, I'm hoping, a relatively easy question, but do you support these Achieve 60 goals? We will have an open comment question coming up. If you have kind of like, if there's nuances or anything different you would like to add here. Something I would comment about, so you're aware of these conversations, and it would be really interesting if you have comments on this. Within the statewide effort, there is that overarching goal of reaching 60%, and then there is that related goal of attaining 60% across diverse race, ethnicity populations. But of course, we don't want to focus, well, we want to focus on outcomes by race, ethnicity, but we don't want to do that at the cost of other forms of diversity within the community. And so we've talked about, do we broaden this? Do we include gender perhaps, or other characteristics within this as we approach this goal? I'd be very interested in any input any of you have about that when we get to those comments. But I see overwhelming positive responses here, which is kind of what we anticipated. These are good goals for our community in that the impact there will be for our community, both the individuals living here, our ability to attract businesses to our community, there will be a lot of consequences of this. I almost said if we're successful, but when we are successful in 2030. So let me move on a little bit and mention the targets for this, because we are a component within a statewide effort. And the way we're approaching target measures, those of you who have the plan open, you'll see that there are placeholders where we'll be putting targets into the final document that moves forward. But our approach to the targets is that we have looked at the numbers through my team, and we are committing to address 50% of the current gap between the county education attainment level and the 60% we're seeking to reach. Then we will collaborate with the other educational institutions within Arizona to support the other 50%. So we're essentially assigning ourselves half of this within the community. And of course, we are not the only higher education institution within Pima County with the University of Arizona here, for example. So we know that this is not our commitment alone. As mentioned, it's a statewide undertaking, but this is how we're approaching it. So we have realistic targets we can work towards, and we have clear numbers we can attach to this. Because we're very focused as we move forward with a strategic plan, that it be measurable and that we can hold ourselves accountable to progress. So that's kind of how we're approaching these targets. And please let us know what you think about that. Is this approach of kind of making ourselves responsible for half of this the right route forward, with the understanding that we collaborate with the other institutions on the other 50%? I mean, we're not stepping away from that completely. All right, so 90% yeses so far. Not very many responses yet, though. We'll see how that changes. But this seems like fairly positive support so far. So I'll give it a moment, let more people chime in on this one. See, 15, 16, all right. A few neutral, lots of positives. This is good, okay.
Yeah, I think our next slide is almost always like, what other thoughts do you have on it, right?
Yeah,
and and so, you know, if you think that there's a better way for us to approach and sort of take on what's our, you know, we can't heavy lift it all ourselves, but what's the goal we can give ourselves that'll help the whole community, all of Pima community, all of Pima County meet that target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so no no's for this one. About 3/4 yes, 1/4 neutral. So let's gather some comments on this one. So tell us what you think about this. So this is really for both aspects of the things I was just mentioning. So the Achieve 60 goals themselves, what do you think about those? Are there things you want us to keep in mind as we move forward, making progress on those things? Are there other subpopulations within our community that we want to specify within the strategic plan, groups that we want to make sure we focus on? I will note at this point, though we'll mention this again shortly, there are some major considerations that will guide all of the strategic plan implementation activities. And one of those is diversity, equity, and inclusion. This will include work to develop the college's next plan in that area. So there are significant equity goals within this as well. Let me see, what do we have coming in? Ambitious and noble, but probably unrealistic. Well, potentially. I don't want to make this goal seem easy, straightforward, or anything like that. There are significant challenges for the institution. If we target the 50%, it means our completed numbers per year essentially need to double. And they need to double relatively quickly, else ultimately they need to more than double. And there are items within the draft priorities that we'll talk through today that are geared towards helping us make significant progress on that, because this is really a transformative effort. For us to be successful on this, we have to make some, not necessarily significant changes, but significant progress, accelerate some of the things that we're doing, really focus on the things that bring value to the students and will enable us to shift the needle significantly on completion. So let me see, more short-term offerings. Very ambitious but challenging. Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be an immense challenge. I personally really like stretch goals because I'm absolutely convinced that if we set ourselves a very ambitious stretch goal, don't make it, we'll still make more progress than we would have done if we hadn't set that goal in the first place. And from my point of view, it's like, okay, let's just try it. Let's get it done. And if we get close and we don't quite make it, I would pretty well guarantee we'll have made more progress than we would do without this. But what do you think about that while we're here? I mean, do you agree with that? Would you think about this in a different way? Feel free to enter comments about that here. And as a note, as Anthony commented, members of the STAR team, Strategy, Analytics and Research, and others are in the chat responding to questions. If we move forward at any point and there's a comment you're like, oh, I wish I'd had a chance to make that, feel free to add that within the chat because they will be saving all the comments there. And we'll also go through there and add any comments through that source to the information that goes forward to the planning team. All right, good. Okay, so let's move along and start thinking about some other aspects of the plan. Thank you all for your input on this one so far. And let's talk a little bit about key performance indicators. We aren't going to talk about KPIs in too much detail today. We do want to give you an opportunity to share your input on these.
They're my favorite, Nick.
What's that?
KPIs are my favorite, and somebody else touched the heart, so they like them too.
Okay, that's awesome. Did you want to speak to these, Anthony, or do you want me to? Do I get to have them?
No, not at all. I think we'll leave that to the expert. But.
So we're going to be monitoring our progress on the Achieve 60 initiative using a set of institutional KPIs. We will also be adding indicators to monitor our progress on the individual priorities within the final version of the plan. The intention is that the institutional KPIs we use for the strategic plan will align directly with the mission fulfillment framework. We have a lot of indicators currently in the existing mission fulfillment framework. We're working to simplify that and streamline that, as many of you have likely seen with the draft statements that are very, very close to being final. We anticipate taking those forward to the governing board in May. For the KPIs, where we can, we will disaggregate those figures by race, ethnicity, gender, age, Pell status, which is kind of a internal higher ed term, but relates to something of a proxy for socioeconomic conditions for the students. It relates to income and the support they receive. And then whether the student is full-time or part-time in their first term with the institution. We are firmly committed at PIMA to supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as standard for a number of years now, we've released data with a high degree of interactivity and slicing and dicing on different populations. We will continue to do that here with the strategic plan. Now, there will be a number of KPIs because we need them at the big picture institutional level, but this gives you a little bit of a flavor of the things we're talking about. As I read through these, please be thinking about things that may be missing. Think institution-wide. There will be metrics by operational area, but there'll be an opportunity on the next slide to let us know if there are things that you think are missing. Or if you like the list as it stands, please share that with us too. So key in terms of Achieve 60 will be the annual headcount, enrollment, and completers. We know we need to be watching these numbers in particular the completers, because that's an absolute primary metric as we think about Achieve 60. And again, focusing on that disaggregation so we can monitor this across diverse populations. We need to make sure that we are looking at student progress. So this will include looking at fall to next term retention, so the proportion of students from the fall who continue with the institution in the spring, and also looking at 2-year credit success and understanding how that looks across the students that we serve, so we can figure out where there may be roadblocks or where we may help support our students better. We'll look at 2-year and 6-year outcomes, in particular completion and transfer rates, but we will also look at whether students are still enrolled, if they left with how many credit hours, for example. We are making progress towards having access for about the first time in at least the last 10 years at PIMA to employment information. So we'll track our students into the workforce. We can already track them to the state universities, so we'll follow them there and see if they're successful. And we'll look at engagement benchmarks from the Community College Survey of Student Engagement. This is a large survey. It's not in-house to PIMA. About 300 institutions participate each year, and there are benchmarks that relate to key aspects of student engagement where we can monitor our performance and compare to other institutions. And then finally, the US Census Bureau released 1-year estimates for various parameters for our community, and we will be carefully monitoring any and all information we can obtain about the educational attainment level within Pima County, so we can understand how that's changing over time. So that's a lot of stuff, I realize. But essentially looking at access to the institution through annual headcount, enrollment, progress measures, completion measures while people are at PIMA, and then post-PIMA success. Those are really some of the primary progress points that we know that we need to monitor for this. What do you think about that? Are these a good set of metrics? Are there things that we are missing? And this is a question to keep in mind as we move forward through this, because we'll give you the opportunity to comment on the priorities as we progress through. And if there is something that we mention as a priority, that you agree with a priority, if there's something you want to make sure we take into account as we develop the way to measure it, please include that in here, because that will be really important information for us to have. So
like put another way, Nick, we might say, what is it we need to keep our eye on in order to make sure that we hit that goal?
Absolutely. Because this is all about us understanding how things are currently going. And as, I mean, I say this fairly regularly when we talk about institutional effectiveness. It's okay if things aren't working today. We just need to figure out what we need to do differently moving forward. And so these KPIs, whatever they show us, they're good things to know. They're all opportunities for us to learn more about how we're meeting the needs of the students, so we can then figure out what we can do better moving forward. So let me see. So the KPIs are essential to learning. Think from a student perspective and parent perspective. Absolutely, we need to very carefully consider the student perspective as we think about the strategic plan. Anthony and I are actually in conversation at the moment to decide how we want to approach some student focus groups on the draft plan, so we can gather their direct input on what we have here and see what we may need to rework or whether things align with what they need. Okay, I see a note there about completions at the 3, 4, and 5 year mark. We have some of that. If you're a PIMA employee through the Web Intelligence System, maintained through the Reporting and Analytics team, We have some of that information available in there. We release a lot of metrics at the 2-year and the 6-year mark. If anybody out there is thinking, ooh, that sounds great, I've never seen that, please reach out to me or to Özlem Kasira, and we will be happy to introduce you to those reports.
So Nick, we had an interesting question come up in the YouTube chat. And this was when we were talking about the Achieve 60. And so Colin, who's one of our writing specialists, asked, what is the current % of certificate and degree attainment? And we went over this in the last Futures conference, right? Where we showed, you know, depending on what group you looked at, it varied quite a bit, but I don't know that I remember the overall. And maybe we could, if you remember the overall, we could talk about that. If not, I will refer us all back to our previous video where we put them up, but that might be an interesting thing to talk about while we wait for more responses to pour in.
Absolutely. And now you've got me since like, oh, do I remember what that one is? Let me find it.
Well, we'll put a disclaimer on it here. This is, you know, napkin math on the fly.
No. We've got it somewhere. I just need to check. I don't want to give the wrong. If there's one thing we're obsessive about in my team, it's making sure we get our numbers straight. Let me see. I think I have it here.
I like the idea of a simple dashboard to see where we're at.
Yeah. So let me see. So at the moment, approximately 43% of Pima County residents aged between 25 and 64 hold an associate degree or higher. So there's a pretty substantial gap, clearly, between 43% and the 60% we're looking to reach. And that is an aggregate number across all Pima County residents. When we disaggregate within this for different race ethnicity populations, some populations are much lower than this. So there's some particular areas of focus that we need to look to. All right, good.
Yeah, so I made the comment about the simple dashboard to see where we're at, but I also, I don't know if I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets Özlem's registration reports or enrollment reports about different terms. It would be, you know, as some of the comments are to make sure that we can see where we're going. And I wonder if there's some kind of report that we can get sent kind of regularly to see where we are on these particular initiatives.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. And we're exploring, actually we're a bit more than exploring for some things. We're moving in the direction of using Power BI for dashboarding at the institution, where we will be able to post those directly to the website. And I know at least the STAR team is excited about this, hopefully others too, but we're starting to explore the use of an analytics cloud application that links with our business intelligence system, which means we can take that next step in predictive modeling, which is really exciting. But I will try not to geek out for purposes of today's event. But if any of you would like to hear more about that, please reach out. All right, let's move along and take a look at our next topic. Thank you, everybody, for your comments here on this one. All right, so let's talk a little bit about integrated planning. This is really just background. There's a big section in the draft plan about this. But one of the things that's come through loud and clear as we've been working on the development of the plan is that there is a perception we have lots of different priorities and they sometimes seem a little disconnected. We're working to leverage the strategic plan to be that connection point across all of the different Pima plans. And I think institutionally, where we are today, we're ready to do that in a way we weren't about 4 or 5 years ago when the current plan went into effect. So there is currently a mid-cycle review being completed on the education and facilities master plans. Once that work is concluded, and I believe there'll be an update to the governing board on Monday next week, if any of you are interested in hearing more about that work, we will take those finalized recommendations, discuss them internally, make decisions about the ones we want to move forward with, and we will incorporate those into the strategic plan for those items that align with the timeline of the strategic plan. So we have those woven together. The strategic plan is also going to directly connect to the development of the college's next strategic enrollment management plan and the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. So we will link those pieces as well. There will also be an absolute direct connection between the strategic plan and operational planning. And so those of you involved in operational areas at the institution, my office will be in touch with you once the plan is in place so we can introduce you to the work you can anticipate in that area. And this is not intended to be a big, huge undertaking for the unit planning aspect of things, but really to ensure alignment. So all of us can be looking at the strategic planning and asking ourselves, what can we do to support success on these priorities? We also have a number of funding channels in place. So units may fund some of this work through their standard operating budgets. We have a strategic initiatives fund, which Dr. Dave B has increased the amount available there for the first year of the plan, so we can initiate some of these projects. There's capital funds available for some of the bigger items. And the PCC Foundation has been extremely supportive of this planning effort. And there may be aspects of this where we look to the foundation for support. And the lead of the PIMA Foundation serves on the planning team, so we can ensure there's that strong connection. And with that, I think, Anthony, it's time for me to turn this back over to you. Do I have that correct?
I have no idea, but it sounds fine to me. I really like this slide, though. That means there's money for the stuff that we want to do to help meet this goal. And one of the things I like about the goal is it seems to just align with our purpose and our mission overall. Anyway, just kind of in a bit more ambitious, an ambitious and perhaps foolish way to say, let's just make a big thing, make a big change, and get it all. So overarching considerations for plan implementation, there are some themes that are important across all priorities, and we would like to get your input on those. And so while we will sort of go through each year and kind of later on talk about what we want to do each year, this is for the whole entire plan. So we're asking that you take a look at the considerations that we have here, these themes that we'd like to highlight throughout the entire plan, and rate them by order of importance. We have diversity, equity, and inclusion, technology changes and the digital divide, sustainability and global climate change, teaching and program excellence, learner-centered design, and responsiveness to local community and industry needs. And so these were themes that came about through the strategic planning process. And we're going to use this opportunity to see where most of us think what's very important and what's not so important, right? Or what's the least most important thing, right? Because we have all of these kind of rows as very important things. What's the most important thing? And I think I'll take the opportunity. I know we don't have a lot of these updates today. We wanted to avoid rereading them. There's one I was very excited to read, so I'm going to read that one. And there's this one's coming from Michael Tolino and the registrar, that now employees and students will have the option to use their chosen or preferred name if you locate it in the menu in the upper right corner of the homepage and go to personal information in, I believe this is in MyPIMA, you're looking for the link that says update preferred first name, and then that will be used in MyPIMA, faculty class grade rosters, D2L rosters, faculty attendance rosters. And so this is great work on getting this out there for our students and our colleagues who maybe have a different name than the one that's listed on the rosters. And so that's great news. Again, MyPIMA homepage, you're looking to update personal information. That's located in the menu in the upper right corner of the homepage. Go to personal information and look for the link that says, quote, update preferred first name, end quote. And so that chosen name will be used for MyPIMA, faculty class grade rosters, D2L rosters, attendance rosters, basically everywhere. So that's awesome. Oh, we've got some variance now in the numbers here. Teaching and program excellence, 9.5. Responsive to local community need, 9. Technology changes and the digital divide, 8.7. 8.3, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then 6.8, sustainability and global climate change. Okay. Any thoughts or comments on that so far? How many we got here? 45? Got 103 people watching, so a few more folks. I'm going to ask you for your comments in just a minute here. By a minute, I mean 15 seconds. So for the next slide, if we'll get there, Nick, do you have any comments that you would like to share about those overarching themes, those considerations for the entire plan?
Not really. I would just add, and you spoke to this a little bit. So as we engage in the strategic plan priorities, there are a few big picture things we want to try, that we want to identify for people to keep in mind as units, as the leads for these different projects approach these different initiatives. And they're kind of interesting ones because things like technology changes, that is not its own kind of like isolated goal, but it's really something that has a potential to inform everything in how we move forward, be it on the academic side, the operational side. And so we want to make sure we clearly spell these things out. So as units are thinking about this, they can make sure we don't make a decision which moves us forward with the initiative, but undermines, say, the institutional commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's really kind of like, how do we prioritize these? If it becomes a choice between like, okay, well, do we focus on the needs of the community or do we focus on learner-centered design, whatever that might be, where the decision points might fall. And this kind of input helps us think about like, oh, okay, this is the one that resonates most strongly. And of course, teaching.
In the ideal world, they don't, it's not an either or situation. Mm-hmm. We can do it in both ways, but that's not, sometimes that's not the case.
Absolutely.
Cool. Do you want to skip to the next one so we can see if our audience members have any comments you want to share on the overarching goals? Great. And it looks like Oslam has emailed Colin an answer to your question, including the Arizona attainment report and the completion numbers. That's great. I have data now. I don't know, and y'all probably don't know this, but I have like 15 screens in front of me right now. I have every hacker movie from the 90s is kind of my life. I've got a glow-in-the-dark keyboard. I've got all of these things here. I actually got permission to go back to my office from time to time because living in the same box for a year has taken its toll on me. And then I went there, and Puma's very great and generous with equipment, but I was spoiling myself, and now I'm used to kind of having this whole hacker set up for my daily office. It felt a little vacant in my office, but then again, there were maybe 4 people on the whole campus aside from the facilities folks. And so I think I'll look forward to when there's more people to interact with. So comments, technology has to be kept up to date. Sure, yeah. You can't be pitted against each other. They need to be integrated. Sure. A mind map of the factors and show their dependencies. I would like to see that. DEI should be a part of any teaching and program excellence initiative. Great, and comments are still coming in. There we go. Okay. I would consider students' personal success over the community's industry needs. These things often go hand in hand, but not always. Mediocre instruction should never be acceptable. Fair enough. Yeah. And so, you know, there are some kind of, what I find interesting, there's some folks who are saying, well, this must come first because obviously, and then there's just others are saying, well, they're integrated, one comes from the other. And then others are saying, you know, if I'm reading it right, and I apologize if I'm not, but it seems like others are saying, well, they all have to happen at the same time. And so they are certainly interconnected, I think. But I don't see anyone saying that this isn't something, you know, that these aren't priorities to keep in mind as we're going forward. And certainly if I've missed that or you're still typing it, please do. But I think we might move on to the next one. Plan structure. Okay, is this one me or you?
I have no idea.
Okay, all right. So I'll do this one and you do the next one. The plan structure, priorities by completion year. Okay, so yeah, that's right. So we're about to show you all of the, we're gonna show you like year one, there's gonna be a year, and then there's gonna be a couple of goals under it. And it's important to remember a couple of things about it. One, when we list something, that's the year we think it will be mostly done, right? Like that's, we'll say all the way done, but you know, if it's mostly done, I think that's fine. That's when it's going to be completed. That doesn't necessarily mean we're not doing work towards that goal earlier on. And so when we first started talking about the plan, we'd see something and be like, oh, we can't do this in year 3. We have to start this in year 1. And the answer is, yeah, of course, we do need to start in year 1, but we're going to list it in the year that it's due. The Achieve 60 targets are listed by year, right? There are fewer priorities in later years. All of these things should be seen, I think, in the context of Achieve 60. So if you see something in there, it's either like, especially early on, you might see something that like, it looks like we're just kind of cleaning house and doing something that as an organization we need to do anyway. But when we looked at that as a planning team, we said, does this relate to Achieve 60? And we said, yeah, you know, this is a barrier to the goals of Achieve 60. So we need to do it. So some maybe way more overtly Achieve 60 goals than others, but they're all supposed to connect. And if, as you're looking at them, you don't see how one connects, or you think that we're missing one, we will have opportunity for you to tell us those questions, ask those questions, or bring those points up to us. Again, both in the Menti poll, and then of course we have folks like Oslam and folks from STAR and the strategic planning team in the chat on YouTube who can address those questions in more or less real time there. So again, if you missed it at the start of the event, you can access the plan at bit.ly/FC21plan. Great, I saw someone hit the heart. I think that's because I read it really cool. Okay, so let's take a look at year 1. And so we will take a look at the year 1 when the deadline is, which is June 30th, 2022. And again, these are the things that we're going to get done in this year. It's a lot of them, right? It's a lot of them. Prioritize high quality customer service, prioritize learner engagement, continue implementation of guided pathways. Like if you see what I'm saying, the first 2 there, they, you know, I think we would agree we need to be doing this anyway, right? But we might say we want to focus on making sure that that's what we're doing. These things, while not quite as overtly connected to Achieve 60 as maybe continue implementation of guided pathways is, they certainly affect it, right? Having high quality customer service and learner engagement are going to help get us to those goals. So continue implementation of guided pathways, further the adoption of open education resources and reduced cost educational materials college-wide with improved communication about when those are available. Develop the, strategic, is that the Strategic Educational Master Plan and the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Plan? Review exists. What's that?
The Strategic Enrollment Management Plan.
Enrollment Management Plan, thank you. There's too many and I got lost, I apologize. The Strategic Enrollment Management Plan and the Diversity Educational Improvement Plan. Review existing unit priorities and processes and develop operational plans. That's year 1. That's a big year. There's a lot going on there. But let's get to your questions. You have questions about these priorities, enter them here. Enter them here? No, enter them here. No questions from the audience.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So this is a new kind of slide. We haven't used this one before, but it's really important to us as you look at these priorities, try and make sure you understand the items that are in here. So as mentioned, prioritizing quality customer service.
We will give you the opportunity to rank them as you did the other stuff. That's the next slide. But again, before we do that, I want to make sure that we've say, well, what is, if you're saying, well, what does it mean to further the adoption of open educational resources, right? Or what does it mean to develop a plan? Aren't we developing those plans already? I think those are good questions and things that we might want to clarify for you before we start ranking.
And something I'd like to add for guided pathways, it's listed on the previous slide as continue the implementation, but really we've implemented guided pathways. And a lot of what we're doing now is working on enhancements. I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Lamata Mitchell yesterday, who leads that work. And she in particular highlighted some of the efforts underway, revising pathways for transfer to the universities, particularly highlighting business and science as making really excellent progress in that area. Also work within math, refining the math pathways and making sure the math class level within given pathways is appropriate to what the students need to be successful within that particular career path. And as a direct quote, she described all of this as exciting progress. So there's lots of good things going on. So this is a new kind of question. So let's take a look and see what we have. How will we get away from silos? That is an outstanding question, and one to which I kind of wish I had a really good answer right now. But there is a mention of silos later on, because we've heard consistently about the challenges that we're kind of all in our little lanes operationally. And it's actually one of the reasons we've restructured the plan this time around. Those of you who've seen previous plans will probably recall. In the past, we have grouped items by kind of subject area. So it could be community engagement, it could be student success. What we've talked about as a planning team is when we do that, do we kind of force ourselves into these silos? Because people may look at something and go, oh, well, that's not me, that's academics. So we've gotten away from that completely with this plan, and we're listing everything by completion year. This, we hope, will kind of get us out of that more siloed way of thinking about how we operate, and that these are everybody's goals and the priorities for the whole institution. Let me see, what do we have? That's a good question.
I brought that up one time, I think. I said, let's get secret shoppers. In all fairness, I think, there's something to be said for it. I may have said it comically at a certain point, but, there's, I don't know, maybe that could be one strategy.
Yeah, and we have some surveys that we send out gathering input from students on their satisfaction with services, things like that. So those are some of the things in place. But as the plan moves forward, one of the areas is going to be, well, where are we missing information? Or what can we do to enhance the information we're gathering about some of these topics to make sure we fully understand and we can move forward in the best way? Okay, how do we fund some of these priorities? That's going to be through the channels that we touched on briefly. So the Strategic Initiatives Fund, which is available for people to apply to at any point during the year. That has a budget for the upcoming year. I believe it's set to $2 million. So that's a chunk of resources that people can access.
Substantially increased from previous years, right?
Yes, yes. With thanks to finance, they increased the resources available there. So we have the ability to fund some of the work that will be needed for this. And also through operating budgets through capital, there are those options too.
Yeah, sorry. The thing that I find interesting about that is that's the strategic planning money, as I understand it, is for things that we are discovering through the year that we want to do immediately that are in furtherance of the strategic plan goals. And then, seeing how it works, and if we want to operationalize it or institutionalize it, then we find other monies for it otherwise. So just because it's not necessarily one and done, it's not necessarily something you'd have to apply for every year, but you say, hey, I've got this really great idea. It's going to help increase our completion rates, and here's what it is. You apply for those funds, and that's how that works, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me see. I see it's reordering itself. Let me see how is it doing this? Ah, okay. I see it's prioritizing our questions. That's awesome. How will we be held accountable to these priorities? This is going to be through tracking of the KPIs and through unit plans. Implementation of the plan will be overseen through the deputies group led by our Chief of Staff, Tom Davis. There will also be regular updates to Chancellor's Cabinet and the executive leadership team. So there's going to be very strong communication to ensure that we have clear leaders of these respective areas who are taking point on these, to make sure the units are thinking about these, and to ensure there's communication to the key groups. So that's going to be a major factor in this. And let's take a couple more questions in here, but then what we will do is we'll take all the questions and we will make sure that we post to the website responses to these so that you can get access to the information. We won't be able to go through all of them today, but we will make sure we release responses that speak to all of these, which you'll be able to access through the integrated planning page in the next week or so. How can PIMA get more exposure in the press regarding all of the great work being done? I personally don't know the answer to that, but I am going to guess Lisa Broski is in the chat because I know she usually is. She leads our external relations team. And Lisa, if you are participating today, if you can hop on into chat and provide some information about that, that would be great. Thank you. A lot of resistance to equity, diversity, inclusion. How will this be addressed? That's really a question that in large part, I kind of refer forward to Ilda Ladner, who isn't on the Zoom call today, so she can't speak to this. As I think about this, it's really about every student coming to PIMA, feeling that they belong at PIMA, and having the opportunities to go from wherever it is they're starting to be successful, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, that we have the right support services in place to support the unique needs of each student who come to our institution. And really, I mean, we've talked for a long time, and Chancellor Lambert has talked about his North Star and student success. That's our purpose. That's the role of the institution, supporting each individual in being successful. So perhaps there's an education component. And I know that through our diversity office, there's lots of different events that are run to raise awareness of some of the barriers that exist for some of our students. And so I anticipate there will be more of those things moving forward. So these are great questions. Thank you for putting these in here. As I say, Anthony and I will look at all of the questions. We will post kind of like frequently asked questions style response to these different things. And we'll send out a message so people know when that's available. But let's move forward to get your input on the statements. So this is a similar kind of rating type question. How important do you consider these priorities to be? From not important all the way through to very important. This will give us insight. If there's anything that stands out as not important for the group here, we'll revisit those and take a look as a planning team about what that means in terms of the plan as it moves forward. But it's also interesting to find out which of these are most important to you. We are very keen to make sure this strategic plan is very operational. Within a given year, we will prioritize those pieces, i.e. list higher in that year, the things that are the most critical pieces. Then in the event that any of us have to make decisions where there simply isn't time and resources to do two things, we can use that listing to help us make a decision about which one we need to prioritize. So let me see, 3 responses. So let me share some numbers with all of you. Let me see if I can find it. So in addition to some of the updates that we've been reading out through my office, we do lots of surveys, and I just wanted to share a few results. In this case, from a pilot that we ran last fall, gathering student feedback at the end of their classes. And we ask a variety of questions in this. Let me just skim through, pick out a few responses. So these are student perceptions and level of agreement with different statements. So the instructor responded to my request for assistance. This, of course, is really important, speaks to engagement with students, responsiveness of our faculty. Within this, 90% of responses, give or take a tiny little bit, either strongly agreed or agreed with that statement, which really speaks highly of the responsiveness of faculty to the needs of the students. Another very important topic, I received ongoing feedback as to my performance in the course. This, of course, is key, helping the students understand where they're at in their progress in a given course. And with this one, we had strongly agree percentages of around about 88%. So again, a very high level of support. And there's a brilliant graph in the version of this that I'm looking at where we have one ginormous bar for agree and then not much else showing up. It's kind of fun. Let me see. So we've got 27 responses on that question in Menti at the moment. Let's see. So prioritize high quality customer service. That one is showing up the highest currently. Then we have prioritize learner engagement, 8.8. I see that the enhancements to guided pathways are currently neck and neck with furthering the adoption of open educational resources and reduced cost materials.
I think, Nick, so the review existing unit priorities and processes, develop operational plans, that one is, I think, scoring lower than I expect, because I'm not sure that folks understand that the goal of that would be to reduce reduce the things that we do that aren't working to make room for some of the other strategic plan priorities. So the whole point of doing the unit priorities and processes would be to find things that aren't working well, and clear your plate of that such that you would be able to reposition your unit or your work group to do some of the new stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that out because I thought, you know, that I would be very excited to do.
Yeah, that's great clarification. And we added this one in pretty much every conversation about the strategic plan, particularly when we talk about the current context of the institution, highlights that we have too much to do. Everybody is too busy. And so a real key focus here, as Anthony mentioned, is what can we stop doing? And it's really by looking at the processes we currently have, the priorities we currently have, and thinking about what can we make more efficient and what is not really a priority. What have we been doing for years where we look at it and go, you know what, we can stop doing this and it's really not going to have any negative impacts. So that's great clarification. All right, so I'm going to move us forward and let's take a look at Anna's question, which is essentially an opportunity for you to give your comments on this set of priorities. So things that are particularly important for us here, do you agree with these? Do these resonate with you? As for those of you who are employees at the institution, do you look at these and go, oh yeah, I see myself in these goals. This connects to what's important in my area and I can make a difference on these things. For the students who are joining us today, as you look at this, is this what you would hope to see from the institution? As you think about the barriers you encounter, the things that work well for you, do these things speak to you in that regard? And of course, community members. Your input is equally important, more important in some respects. We always want to focus on community and students and gather outside perspectives on how we're doing. What do you think of these priorities? Do you think this is the right direction to ensure we are gradually progressing further towards being the institution that this community needs us to be? And while these comments are coming in, Anthony, do you want to read another one of the updates?
Of course I do. Let's see here. Have we talked about Earn to Learn? Because that one's something fun. So Earn to Learn is a matched savings program that allows qualified students, and qualified students being those who are able to receive at least $1 in Pell Grant aid, to earn $500, which will be matched at 8-to-1. So a $500 investment by the student turns into $4,500 in educational support. Additionally, students are required to participate in financial literacy training to best understand money management, both during the Earn to Learn experience and beyond. A major goal of Earn to Learn is to minimize or eliminate student loan debt. PCC was one of the first community colleges in the country to partner with Earn to Learn, and the first cohort of Earn to Learn scholars were enrolled in fall 2020 with approximately 60 students participating in the program. They were all full-time students pursuing an associate's degree or looking to transfer at one of the 3 state institutions. The enrollment deadline for the 2021 Earn to Learn cohort has passed, but they are accepting applications for spring 2022. Visit earntolearn.org to make an application, and the deadline to complete that step is Friday, April 30th. Okay, well, got to think ahead for Earn to Learn.
We have some very interesting comments coming in. I've been reading through them. So a few comments related to guided pathways and the essential going forwards. Oh, I just about to read one about inefficient services and it disappeared off my screen. It will hopefully come back. Excellent goals. This is good. Many areas need an outside perspective to improve their programs and processes. This is an interesting comment. I've been thinking about this regarding a couple of the more kind of operational focus pieces in here. Because I saw another comment come through that focusing on these kinds of priorities is difficult on top of what's already a regular 40-hour work week for everybody. And whether it would be in the institution's interest to engage with an external entity that has experience in kind of efficiency models in education, who can help us look through our processes and figure out the ways where there are opportunities to make improvement, and have that outside perspective to kind of help us think through this and take a look at some of these things to support the work in this area. The more I've heard comments about how everybody is too busy, the more I get convinced that if we can get a proper handle on our existing processes, if we can get the time to improve the efficiency of the things we do all the time, we can free up some of our time and effort to be able to focus on some of these improvement areas. More student input is imperative. Yep, I agree. We need more student input. As I mentioned earlier, Anthony and I are in conversation right now to decide how we want to bring more student perspective into this. And thank you to colleagues who may be on the line who've been in communication with me about methods to do that. All right, good comments here. Let's move along. Let's see, let's look at year 2. Here we go. All right, so I'll read through these ones and then maybe hand over to Anthony for the discussion on these ones. So year 2 will have a deadline of June 30th, 2023. As was noted, actually, I'm not sure if we touched on this initially. This is the year when we anticipate completing these items, but that doesn't mean that work won't necessarily start in the first year, depending on the nature of what these items are. Those of you who are internal to the college are familiar with the Chancellor's goals. We may leverage those goals as an avenue to highlight key milestones for these items that need to complete in year 1. So one topic, simplify the learner and community experience. Prioritize learner needs and not operational needs. So when we have decisions about how processes work, one of the phrases used was kind of put the bureaucratic burden on the institution, not the students. There was one comment made about education in one click. What's the simplest we can make it for our learners to engage with the institution and access the services and the education that they need? Then realigning offerings around areas of interest for both credit and non-credit educational pathways. That's work that's in the early stages at the institution and something they had strong support through the last Futures Conference. Then we're looking to expand completion points to include industry credentials and micro credentials. This is something actually that we may move to year 1 because there's an initiative the college is involved with. And Anthony, if you want to find the Growth Engine Fund update, that would be a great one to mention when we go to the next slide. Then we want to look to expand high school dual enrollment, which is enjoying significant growth in enrollment numbers. Expand IBEST programs that show all signs of being successful for our students and supporting their successful completion of programs. And looking to prior learning assessment. So people who have developed skills through other channels can kind of test out of certain classes and accelerate their way through their education. We want to expand those and fully leverage them as on-ramps into the institution. And we already do some of this. It's not that we don't do any of these things. We have very successful programs in these areas, but how do we do more of that and leverage the successes that we've seen so far? And then the last one, look at the technology we use and the alignment to operational needs. We have a very complex system, and we have some units that have like 10 different kinds of software they use for their day-to-day work. Can we consolidate that? Can we simplify that? Are we confident that the technology we use really truly supports the business processes that we need? And relating back to the first one, do those processes simplify things for the learner and make their experience with us easy? Do they make our operations efficient to maximize our available time for other things? So this is what we currently have listed for year 2. As noted, one of these we're pretty confident is likely to move to year 1 because of our commitments through the Growth Engine Fund. But this is how these ones currently stand. And let me move this forward and open this up to see if you have any questions that relate to this. I can see our questions from the other slide is still in here, so this could be interesting to dig through, but we'll see if we can find any related to this specifically. This is the joy of experimenting with a new question type. But Anthony, were you able to find that update about the Growth Engine Fund?
I sure did. So our Pima Community College Workforce Division, in partnership with Pima Online, Deans, Student Affairs, STAR, Marketing, and our regional business and industry partners have been at the forefront of innovation to address the systemic inequalities that have only been exacerbated by the pandemic. In October 2020, Pima Community College was one of 6 community colleges across the nation that was selected by the Education Design Lab's Community College Growth Engine Fund to innovate, scale, and diffuse micro pathways. Through a reskilling and recovery framework, micro pathways are designed for adult learners that have been displaced due to the pandemic and the AI superpowers. Central to the design are industry-recognized and industry-valued stackable credentials that prepare learners for high-demand jobs with family-sustaining wages. Micro pathways combine the human and machine skills that are required during Industry 4.0. Pima Community College's micro pathways are in emergency medical services, IT, cybersecurity, building and construction technology, automotive technology, and automated industrial technology. In total, the team plans to launch 8 programs by September 21, all less than 1 year in duration, that will help aid the economic recovery by reskilling and upskilling workers most negatively impacted by the pandemic. The team has been collaborating with the Education Design Lab and 5 other community college systems across the country to share best practices and spending time listening to feedback from learners and business and industry partners to refine those new programs. So huzzah. It's actually very exciting stuff. Been in a lot of conversations with it, and obviously some folks at Pima Online in doing that. So yeah, no, it's very exciting stuff. But I also feel like I read that whole thing without taking a breath, so now. So great foundation. Will these have subsections for completion? I think they will. Will they? Nick's nodding, so I can guess.
They will. What will happen with these as we implement them? So there'll be a direct ask to operational units to think about how they relate to these goals, and on a unit level, what can we do to support each of these items? There will also be an implementation lead who will be responsible for identifying the truly big picture things we need to do institutionally for these. That will in turn develop into a project plan that will have milestones, so we can make sure we are making progress and we can monitor and hold ourselves accountable to progress on this. Let's see what other questions we have. This is a good question. So there's a few different areas through which we get input. A number of the software platforms we use to interact with students, I believe this is the case for Cula, some of the others, have options for us to push out surveys to students to get their feedback on their satisfaction with the experience they've had. We also have surveys that go out through my office that go to all students or a subset of students. We're actually working on one right now related to technology. And then roughly every 3 to 4 years, we usually try and aim for 3, but the pandemic delayed us last year. We have bigger institution-wide satisfaction surveys that we send out, the CESI instrument, Community College Survey of Student Engagement, that I mentioned before. And that enables us to get benchmark information to kind of compare across different areas. It's a little more tricky when it comes to general community, though that's a conversation I've been having with external relations a couple of times. And business and industry, primarily that goes to the advisory boards and at the program level, as they have the most robust connections to the individuals who are hiring in the respective area.
Yeah, and I think for online, we've got the priority survey for online learners, which we do every couple of years. And then I know our director of online student success, Jackie Allen, has and continue to has planned several meetings with students, I think some next week even, to get the sense of feedback on design changes on certain online specific or virtual specific things. Yeah.
We'll look at one more question here and then we'll move on and kind of gather your perceptions on the importance and any comments you have on these items. So how will all staff be empowered to do their jobs without roadblocks from supervisors? Well, I'm going to start with saying I hope we don't have too many roadblocks from supervisors, but one of the things that we propose in year 1 is doing some really detailed process mapping. And I could talk at length about process maps. They're wonderful things, but in particular, there's one style of process map where you map out all the steps in a process and then you figure out how long each one takes. And you can find out where the delay points are in processes. And that can be really helpful and powerful at identifying stuff like, okay, well, this takes an hour, this takes an hour. Well, then we wait 3 weeks for this piece. It's like, okay, well, what can happen about the 3-week piece to improve it? And it makes it more objective. It's kind of information about the process that you can look to and use that to go, okay, this is the area we really need to look at. And there's a suite of techniques that we'll roll out for the institution to kind of help us make progress, to make our processes work as well as they can to support progress. So let's move on now. Now we know we'll see these questions again next time, so we'll come back to some of them then. So tell us about the importance of these priorities to you. So these are specifically the year 2 items that we mentioned before. What do you think about these?
I think they're great. Oh, you're talking to everybody. Yeah, very important, not important. You know, maybe our scale should have been important to super duper important, because I feel like a lot of the ones that have made it through this vetting, you know, are important.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think that I helped make it, so I suppose there's that.
Yeah. And something I would add for all of you attending today, I mean, the majority of you are not members of the planning team. The way we identify these priorities is that the planning group has been having lots of different conversations. We've done some futures work, looking at kind of major drivers of change, signals of possible change, and thinking through what are the key topics we need to think about. We've looked at institutional context that looks at PIMA today, our size, our complexity, our culture. We've had some of the traditional planning pieces like a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We have the input from the previous Futures Conference events. And Anthony and I compiled all of the different input from, of course, all the different conversations, including sharing the comments from the Futures Conference events, and turned this over to the strategic planning team, put them in groups to look through, to draw out what seemed to them the critical priorities across all the different conversations that we've had. Across those 2 groups, we got a lot of similar items. And we compared notes, we put a full list together, put them back into groups. And then it was really from that list developed by that team of people that we then went, okay, let's see how we might put this together on a year-by-year basis. And then the planning team has had 2 opportunities so far to look at this draft plan and make refinements to it. So this is kind of where this comes from. So it's informed through a lot of different things. And I would say is my part in this. Whenever my office sends out a student survey, I read every single student comment that comes back in. And we have a lot of different comments that we've collected over the last couple of years through different instruments. And that's something that I have kept in mind as we've been working these statements to ensure there's alignment between that student input we get through the surveys and what we have here. So let me see. Anthony, you want to talk us through this one a little bit?
Do I? Sure. Do you want me to read something from the other thing, or just kind of read through the priorities?
Read through these. I guess we're seeing a fairly high degree of importance similar across most of them, right?
Yeah, I like to simplify the learner and community experience, prioritize learners and not operational needs. It seems to be leading the pack, along with expand dual enrollment, IBEST programs, and prior learning assessment. Fully leverage fully as on-ramps to PCC. Yeah, the realigning offerings around area of interest seems to be, seems to be dipping there as priority. That's okay. And assess PCC technology and realignment and alignment to operational needs. That's about 8.5. That one, yeah, that one's interesting. I saw in the chat too, someone mentioning less paperwork or simplified forms, right? That there's a lot of, and that I think that was left maybe left over from year 1, but it could also be seen as part of this, the year 1 goal of reassessing what it is we do and how we do it to make more time, kind of aligns with making sure that we have the right technology for operational needs. It's a surprising, for those who haven't had to adapt technology or deal with vendors and contracts, there's a surprising amount of gobbledygook that goes along with that. I mean, important stuff, but also just kind of way more nuances and the state requires certain things being the contract and stuff like that. So it can get quite in the weeds there for that one. But I think the next one we'll be talking about will be, did you want to move on to comments on this? Yeah. So share any comments that you have about the priorities for year 2. Simplify the learner and community experience, realign offerings around area of interest, expand completion points to include industry credentials and micro-credentials, expand dual enrollment, IBEST programs and prior learning, assess PCC technology and alignment to operational needs.
All right, while we wait for comments on there, let me read one of the updates that we have here. So there was a big event at PIMA yesterday that many of you may have attended. And so CTE, National Letter of Intent, began in 2014 by the founder, Clark Coco of Washburn Tech. So PIMA joined this effort 1 year later in 2015. And this is a national event to recognize our CTE students. Similar to athletic signings, students commit to completing a program at PIMA. In participation with deans, faculty, administration, and staff at PIMA, and with partnerships at our high schools and business industries, PIMA has grown in size from 10 student commitments in 2015 to 551 student commitments this year, which is amazing over a fairly short amount of time. You can view this event anytime on the PCC TV YouTube channel. It streamed for the first time yesterday, and a whole lot of different people are involved in this, but mentioned to Gail Bell, who does a lot of the logistics and organization behind this and who sent me this update to include. Thank you, Gail. All right, so what kind of comments do we have coming in? Oh, that's a good one. How do we get students access to OER if they do not have access to technology and the internet at home? I know that's something the institution is working on, to think about how we can address the digital divide and support technology access for our students, be it through Wi-Fi hotspots or other needs.
Yeah, and one of the other things we had talked about as a group in the strategic planning team was that was one of the reasons we put OER and low-cost affordable materials, because one of the options is Include Ed, which has a very low cost, but also comes with the option of purchasing a textbook. And then that cost is kind of paid up front. And so you still get some of the advantages of OER, which is that it's immediately available to students, but it's also available as a print version. I think the other answer to that question might be just really making sure that those OER doesn't necessarily mean online, although it's sort of synonymous at this institution since that's where the initiative started. But OER just means no copyright. So there's nothing to stop folks from developing resources and having them printed off for students at a very low cost. It's just not a work process that has been well streamlined. Wish simplifying was as simple as it sounds. Me too.
Yeah, it can be hard to make things simple, can't it? And I see a question here about what defines areas of interest versus career or educational. So the areas of interest are actually posted to our website. There's been a lot of work through the Pathways Initiative to establish those. And they are areas that link related subjects together so that there is one point that students can go to for information on a given area. I don't have the list available in front of me, but an example would be STEM and tying together the science and engineering programs in one place. So it's easy for the students who are interested in that area to be able to go to one place on the PIMA website and understand what their options are in terms of things that they might pursue with us in that area. And we have kind of areas of interest that touch all the different aspects of the offerings that the institution has. All right, so I'll pause here for just a moment more and then we'll move on to look at the last 2 years. Just so you all know, there are less things in each of the last 2 years. And this is somewhat intentional because we anticipate there will be other priorities that emerge in the next year, next 2 years, and we want to make sure we're saving staff capacity to deal with those things. This will relate to an annual review we do of the strategic plan, and we have to be mindful of the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan and the strategic enrollment management plan, and ensuring we have time and capacity to deal with those as well. So let's take a look. Let me see. Okay, year 3. So deadline now in 2024. So there's really 3 pieces here, but 2 of them are closely related. And the planning team has been talking about collapsing 2 of these and combining them. First, transform how PIMA engages with adult learners. There was a comment about this on the previous slide, and this is a good point to stress. This is not when we start work on this initiative. This is when we complete work on this. So those of you who are here for the last Futures Conference, we talked about the high proportion of people in our community who are either high school graduates or who have some college but no degree. Connecting with those potential students is arguably key to our success on Achieve 60. We also know that this is a way that we can help those individuals improve their career prospects and things like that. So that's something that we look to complete significant work in this area by 2024. Then the other 2 are more operational in nature, but we're very aware as we think about the plan that we need to improve our efficiency as an organization and transform ourselves to ensure we meet what the community needs us to be. So expanding capacity to work effectively across silos and assessing resource utilization across the institution to determine where the roadblocks are to progress. Are there particular offices where we are just fundamentally short of staff, for example, where we really need to expand the number of people we have there. And those of you on the YouTube stream who work at PIMA, we're all very aware of the fact that we are all stretched too thin, but there are more significant challenges in some areas than others. And we need to take a look at those, figure out where they are and where there's the most value in us expanding the additional resources. So these are the things that we have for year 3. And let me, if I can press the right button, which I keep not doing. There we go. So let's open this up to questions again. And while we're here, I'll give you a couple minutes to put questions, but we'll take a look and see what existing questions we have here already. So have we benchmarked satisfaction with our competitors? Yes, we have. So this is something we can do through the Community College Survey of Student Engagement. And this has been an interesting journey for PIMA, and it's I'm really keen to see what the next set of results look like. When we first administered this one, which is probably like about 8 years ago now, for each of the different benchmarks that they use to compare across the colleges, we were consistently below the average for the institutions participating in SASE. With a lot of hard work across a lot of different areas, the next time we administered this, which was like about 3 years after that, we had reached essentially the midpoint. We were at the average across the colleges. Of course, we strive to be a premier community college. We're not seeking to be average, but you have to pass through average to become premier. And we were starting on a back foot somewhat because we were not average when we first started completing these surveys. So next time, it's going to be great to see how our results look. Have we continued that positive trajectory? But keeping in mind that we need to interpret the results through the lens of the pandemic, because that may impact some of the student responses. How do we improve student engagement with important services? This is a complicated question with lots of different answers depending on the specific unit of the institution. If the plan moves forward with some of the key items here where we talk about prioritizing the needs of the learner, improving customer service, each individual operational area that has a direct student-facing role will be encouraged to gather engagement data related to their particular services. We already do this in many different areas, but to make sure we're leveraging those data and understanding what we need to do to improve engagement with the students. Both from more kind of support services side of things, through student affairs, the learning centers, etc., but also from an instructional point of view within the classroom. And as I say, these are all areas where we gather information currently, but really making sure there's a focus on leveraging that information to support improvement. Let's see. Yep, more a statement than a question. A simple user and community experience should be another North Star. Will aid student success and increase satisfaction. Absolutely. Agreed. All right, so I didn't see the number of questions going up. So, and I'm watching the time. So let's move to get your ratings on the importance of these priorities. So transforming how the colleges engage, how the college engages with adult learners, expanding our capacity to work effectively across silos, and then assessing our resource utilization, figuring out whether are roadblocks to progress that result from limited resources, and figuring out what the solutions need to look like. Of course, there's lots of different ways we might solve these things. And again, it could be unique to a specific area, but we need to figure out where those roadblocks are so we can work out how to move past them. And let me see, while we're talking about that, let me share a couple of quotes from the survey. If I can get my little notes on this one. So each year we complete a graduate exit survey and we get feedback from students on their experience. We find out what worked well for them. We find out what did not work well for them. And there are a few different areas where we ask what's their favorite memory of the institution, what was their highlight from their time at the college. And so to share one quote, so one student's comment about what they liked most was the sense of community and acceptance at the institution. And another student talked about how everyone felt like a family member in their experience at the college. And if I have chance, I will open up the survey results, because we invite input on their specific courses and their specific experiences with different faculty members with whom they took classes. And there is just overwhelming positive responses that we receive about individual faculty, the impact they had on their students, and how transformative it's been for them. It's really great to see and read through, and the many positives that students experience with us. So let's see how our ratings are going for these priorities. So fairly positive responses for the
24, 25 responses from 85 folks.
I think we got to 31 last time, so maybe a couple more people will respond here. So assessing resource utilization across the institution is the highest score here, but not by very much, over transforming how we engage with adult learners and expanding capacity. All right, good. What do you think, Anthony? Should we go to the comments?
Yeah, let's hit the comments. We got a few more slides to get through. We got about 26 minutes. People have been listening to us for an hour and a half. They might be losing steam. I understand. So let's get some comments again. I'll read the priorities again for year 3. Transform how PCC engages with adult learners. Expand capacity to work effectively across silos. Assess resource utilization across the college. Identify roadblocks to progress resulting from limited resources, and determine solutions. Ambitious for any year, but again, these are the year that they'll be done, not necessarily the year that we start, but they're pretty big, so we'll have to have some of this work done in previous years. Comments, concerns about that? I think we have a couple more things to read, don't we? Do we read about the student engagement team? I don't think so. So the student engagement team and PCC student senators and peer mentors hosted an inaugural virtual student town hall on Zoom in May 2020, with the chancellor, provost, and president of campuses addressing a variety of student questions that the student leaders facilitated. The event had over 120 participants attend and set a standard for student engagement. Additional forums with college leadership since the pandemic occurred have followed. The team includes PIMA student senators from 2019 to 20, peer mentors for student life, first year experience, and Aztec Resource Center, and student life coordinators. Getting a couple comments trickle in here. Both engaging adult learners and reallocating resources to priorities are essential. The critical need to leverage internal resources and identify gaps will allow us to better serve our community and break internal silos. Engage with adult learners also means addressing their scheduling needs and guided pathways. True that. Yep. So someone says, I would think work on silos would start earlier. Sure does. It's just, again, this is the year that we're hoping that has been completed, right? Roadblocks will impact all other factors. Making technology available to students is very important for them to keep up. Direct feedback from the community is vital. They're the ones who will, it disappeared for a second, dictate where PIMA is headed and determine the needs of the college's demographic focus. Great. My workout buddy just texted me and told me I'm not allowed to have a donut today, which is making me sad. From year 1, we'd expect cross-functional work. There'll be early experience on breaking down silos. Employees from different teams would view this work together. Yeah, very good. Well, I think we should move on to year 4. I think we still have the comment section open in YouTube if there's more, but we'd like to make sure that we get to the last couple. Again, some of these are appearing not quite as many priorities are due. That's because we got to leave space for other things to happen. Work on this should have started prior to year 4. This is kind of when it will be wrapping up. So year 4 deadline, June 30th, 2025. Reinvent the learner payment structure to include assessing flat rates by program, adopt different approaches in different areas as needed. Complete the implementation of Lean Six Sigma to increase operational effectiveness. You're for it. Good. Questions about these priorities? Enter them here. Are you interested in what it means to reinvent a learner payment structure? Or do you need to know what Lean Six Sigma means? I did when I first heard about it. Okay. How will these changes be implemented? That's a great question.
And I can talk about that a little bit.
I was going to say something clever like carefully. Yes, we'll carefully implement these changes. But you probably have a better answer, Nick, so let's do that.
Well, I agree with yours as well, though. Carefully indeed. So we'll roll these out through the operational planning process. We are also going to have this as a standing item for conversation through various different leadership groups. And we will ask each different unit to look specifically at the goals here and think about how they connect to these items. A lot about this plan is this final shift from these very detailed plans we used to have in the past to these broader goals that we can kind of align all of our efforts and work around. For any given unit, you'll know what it is on your list of assignments that touch these specific goals and how you're helping move the needle or shift the needle to make progress on Achieve 60. There's some details that will get built out in the course of the full semester once the plan is approved. So we can make sure that we have a good, strong structure and good, clear communication about what we're doing for these things and communication about our progress or lack of progress. If there are areas where we just don't see the improvement we want to see, well, we'll be open about that. And we'll kind of get together as a college to think about, well, what can we do about that and move forward.
Great. Will OER eliminate additional cost of physical textbooks or materials for students? Probably not entirely, no. And it certainly depends. I mean, OER, it's what we've seen is in some disciplines it works very well. There's a lot of robust OER that you can adapt or create, and in some cases, not so much. There are places like OpenStax, which has really robust professional textbooks. In some disciplines, they work really great for our students. And in other cases, we still need to kind of contextualize them for our students, which is a process of adaptation. There are some resources at the college, including the use of faculty sabbaticals to adapt OER materials, or also OER award that's offered through PIMA Online for the adaptation of open resources. There's also an Open Pedagogy Award. But even when those things happen, sometimes, especially if you want, if a student needs a physical textbook or they want one, and we do get that pathway I was talking about, that there would still be a cost associated with that in terms of the printing of the materials. So I don't think it eliminates it, but it does kind of, what we've seen, and sort of like the pragmatist in me is like, it does kind of counterbalance what was kind of an ever increasing rise of textbooks. I have a fun chart I can send you if you want to show how the textbook cost had risen. And then I'm curious, I haven't done the updates since OER has become much more popular, but what we've seen in certain disciplines is even when, we're not gonna go back to, we're going back to the publisher has been lowering the prices in response to the wide availability of OER. So even in disciplines, I think math is one of them, where they're still going back to my Pearson, because they have really robust student support that comes with it, and sort of like adaptive learning to help the students understand, like it makes sense for them, but the publisher is working with it. So there is a I don't think it eliminates it, but it's a good question. Also, since I was thinking about it today, I see that with this video only has like 8 likes, and I know that we're not on Twitch or anything, but if you hit the like and subscribe button for PCC TV stream, you're going to see all kinds of fun stuff come up when they present stuff. All the board meetings come out on PCC TV stream, and while you may not like watching it in one times, you can watch it in 2 times, and then everybody sounds like they're moving fast, and it seems very efficient to me to watch a board meeting in double speed. But if you get a chance, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to PCC, and turn on notifications so you can see when it comes out. Now I feel like a proper internet star.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get your input on these priorities. So do you consider how important are these things, do you think? So reinventing the learner payment structure. This is a step towards simplifying things. How do we make things clear? It helps us communicate costs. So for example, it could be a flat rate for a program. If you want an associate degree in business administration, for example, there could be $1 figure attached to that, and that will cover everything that's associated with that program. Be it tuition, fees, textbook costs, whatever that might be. And then completing the implementation of Lean Six Sigma, which is a very widely used effectiveness process. And there's different levels of complexity that you can bring to that, but focusing on those pieces that will bring the most value to the institution to improve our ability to serve our students.
All right. Yeah, and while we're waiting for those responses to come in, we didn't talk about My Path to ASU, have we? Because I think that might be our last update today. So let me go ahead and do that. Pima Community College is entering into a new alliance with Arizona State University to provide Pima students a seamless transfer experience with the My Path to ASU program. My Path to ASU, registered trademark, allows students to take the steps needed at the start of their college experience to successfully plan their transfer to ASU, ensuring a smooth transition process and student success. Through the partnership, these students will find their transfer experience simplified. They will have access to personalized benefits to help them navigate the transfer experience, which includes end-to-end learner navigation through course-by-course guided pathways, guaranteed general admissions to ASU and admissions into My Path to ASU major choice if all the requirements are satisfied. Some majors have additional or higher admission requirements. 3, connected experience through personalized ASU communications to prepare academically and build a connection to ASU. Pima and ASU will work collaboratively to promote educational degree pathways containing ground and online course offerings. These pathways will ensure their courses are applicable toward their degree in their chosen major and minimize credit loss. So that sounds great. My Path to ASU.
Awesome, great. That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, we got about 23, 24. Lean Sigma 6.7, a little less, bringing in a little less than reinvent the learner payment structure. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. Let's move to the comments for this. And we're approaching the end of the session today. We're going to have one more open text section after this. And so as you're thinking about your comments on these 2 things, so the learner payment structure and implementing an effectiveness process for the institution, also be thinking now about the things we've talked about and your thoughts on what we're missing. Is there anything institution-wide that from your perspective is important for the college to prioritize within the strategic plan that we have not mentioned here? Once we wrap up gathering comments on year 4, we'll give you an opportunity to provide your comments on that as well. Because it's really important to us not just to get your feedback on the things that we have listed here, but also to hear about the things that we may be missing. And those are all items we'll take to the planning team. So I see one question here about Six Sigma. Six Sigma is kind of a fairly industry standard across industries method to look at processes and look at the efficiency of those processes. So it involves mapping processes, defining potential business problems or areas of weakness that you might want to improve. So a lot of this is about understanding processes, documenting them, and thinking about the steps involved. then you, yeah, sounds like manager speak. It's absolutely manager speak. This is the name of this system, however.
You got me. You got me.
That was you.
No, it wasn't me. But I mean, I was just saying just because it is doesn't mean that there isn't a reason for it, right? I think there's a ton of corporate speak out there. There's a ton of stuff, but I think for it to make it this far in the strategic planning process, and again, I don't know much about it other than to say that it's made it this far in the strategic planning process with Nick being a big supporter and others as well, and so there's a ton of corporate gobbledygook out there, but that doesn't mean that all of it is meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it essentially gives us a well-tested set of tools and methods we can use to understand the processes and measure their effectiveness and figure out ways to improve. Yeah. Well, I agree with the comment here. So Lean Six Sigma is a widely recognized and respected improvement process, but the important thing is that we have an effective and engaging continual improvement process and not which specific one. Absolutely. And if Lean Six Sigma stays in here, I would say that there would be a careful look of like, well, which steps in this are valuable to the institution, and we focus on those. A full implementation of Six Sigma is a very entertaining 500-page book, and I'm not sure any of us have the time and motivation for that whole thing. Though I know the STAR team will be very excited by all the statistics involved in some of the steps, but I know others probably won't be. So there will be a balance in how that's done. Oh, question there about the transfer process to ASU, and can we establish equally simply processes to U of A and NAU?
Yeah, I did use the word gobbledygook 3 or 4 times. Sorry. Yes, I don't know too much. I'm sorry, I've interrupted you, Nick. I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead, please. You're fine.
Oh yeah, my path to ASU seems like it's a ASU branded thing that they're connecting with us. So my hope is, and if someone in the chat knows for sure, that do we have those seamless transfer processes already with others? If not, I'm pretty sure we're open to it. And so how do we get that started? And we're up to 11 likes, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, that's awesome.
Still 75 people watching that. So,
you totally sounded like a pro YouTube person with your pitch there.
We need the algorithm. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Absolutely. All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to move us along to the next slide, and then we will kind of start wrapping up the event for today. If there's anything you want to add here and you haven't had a chance to do so, please go ahead and put that in comments in YouTube. And as I say, we will get the comments from there as well. But as mentioned, the things we've been looking at are the proposed strategic priorities for the next 4 years for the institution. What we really want to make sure we do is give you the opportunity, though, to let us know what we are missing, if there's anything that stands out. Now, if you're thinking about this and going, no, there's nothing missing, this all looks great, add a comment in here to that extent too. That's good for us to know as well. So we can try and get that overall sense of like, okay, how are we doing? Have we got this about right? Are there things we need to move? While you're thinking about that, a few details I'll add. This is currently a draft plan. There's a number of different groups who are currently taking a look at this within the institution to provide their feedback, including the executive leadership team and the deputies group, which is comprised of kind of the assistant vice chancellors, vice presidents, etc. Some directors too. So we're particularly working with those groups to understand the timing of some of these. Are there items in year 1 that should be year 2, or things in year 2 that should be year 1? Where do we sequence these in a way that's going to support success on these particular initiatives? We haven't asked that question of this group today because we're going to work with the subject matter experts to think about that. And I'm very curious to see what you have to say if there are things we're missing and what we can add in to strengthen this plan. But I'm also thinking it's Friday morning. We're approaching the 2-hour mark. You're probably tired. You might be like, okay, If we don't put any priorities in this box, well, then maybe they'll wrap up sooner and I can go get a cup of coffee.
I do love coffee.
Yeah.
Even Nick's voice is stretching 4 conferences in.
I'm starting to get croaky. It's like,
Yeah.
All right, these sound like great priorities, and then maybe sub priorities as we move forward. Yep.
Well, one thing we might think about doing is not actually changing the slide, but just kind of maybe giving our thanks now, giving people moving along with the next slide, just kind of verbally, and letting folks enter in on the slide. Would you be okay with that, Nick? And I can read out some of the thanks and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so we want to give our thanks, of course, to the strategic planning team, all of the members, the great staff at PCC TV, Informational Technology, Access and Disability Resources, External Relations, and the whole STAR team, Strategy, Analytics, and Research, as well as all the community members, staff, students, and faculty members, and administrators who were able to come today. Of course, the Chancellor for giving the opening remarks. And I do want to remind you that there's going to be a survey. So please stick it out, especially if you are a student or a community member. We do have those gift prizes, but if you don't fill out the survey, we won't know who you are. We won't know how to get in touch with you if you've won, and they are, substantial. So let's hang out just a few more minutes for that. Did I miss anybody with the thanks? Because I don't want to.
I don't think so. I think that was everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Outstanding. Great work. I love that comment. Interdepartmental team building. Exactly. And we were talking a little bit about how we might do that. I said, well, what if we all, what if we lent each other lent each other staff from time to time, send a director over here, a director over there, just to see what the work is, or even have one day a month where, you just kind of open yourself up to that cross team building. But whatever pragmatic ideas that you have in terms of making that happen, we'd love to hear. It's looking good. I think we may have exhausted everybody.
Yeah, maybe. So what I'm going to do is move us on and skip to the slide where we have the survey information. So everybody, if you're here, please complete the survey. But as Anthony mentioned, in particular, community members and students. If you have any remaining comments you want to enter, you can always put those in the YouTube chat. And with that, let me move forward. So we have our thank yous, as has been mentioned, and I want to make a particular thank you to the members of the strategic planning team who have been working for 2 years on mission review and development of this plan. So thank you, everybody who's been involved in that, particularly Anthony as co-chair of this process. Thank you. Of course, thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you. We appreciate your time today and at previous events. And let me get you to this survey. So there's a address listed here. I don't think you need to put the HTTP in, but if you go to bit.ly and then PIMA FC21, you can fill out that survey, provide your information, and then later on today, if you are the winner from the community or the student sections, I will be giving you a call and letting you know. So please provide your phone number. If I can't reach you by phone, I'll also email. So please make sure you provide both of those things. And with that concludes our event today. We'll leave this up for a moment so you have access to the survey, so you can go fill that out. But thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful late spring and summer, and we will hopefully see you in person next year for the 2022 Futures Conference. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we have